meeting. And we'll try to get through this as fast as possible. Everyone feel free to ask any questions that you would like. I'd like to go around the table first. Everyone can introduce themselves. Our guests, I'd like to welcome also. And
I'll go ahead and start. I'm Ben Herbst from Goldman Sachs. We are the co-underwriter with Marvin Marcus from Siebert, who is on screen today.
And you should know, I run also software consulting business named Trivision Group, work in the city and state.
an appointee of the governor.
Yeah.
Mr. Mack.
David Mack, appointee of everyone. They can't get rid of it. But currently on the NPA in Nassau County, the first assistant police commissioner for the last 31 years.
Would you please come to the city and give me some advice?
No, Eric, he can only do the job so well. And he worked under me at the MTA. You know, he was a police captain. But, you know, his hands are tied. He understands. The legislature and everyone else. And council. Well, we go back, not only as a political ally, family, friends.
Bob Abrams appointed by the governor.
Former Attorney General, if nobody remembers, but I do.
Dan Berman also appointed by the governor.
A great builder.
Jessica Maiden from the Department of City Planning here as a representative for Chair Garodnick.
So
Silverman appointed by a guy named Mike Bloomberg.
Sam Nadapoff, appointed by the governor.
Jessica Healy, appointed by the mayor.
Joseph Fratigliano appointed by the governor.
George Klein, chairman, appointed by the mayor, reappointed by the mayor, and have spent enough years, but please God, get everything built and done, and I'm going to give them time.
We heard that before.
Yeah, no, you know.
Sunset. Chuck Advisors, real estate advisor, corporation. Rob Schubert, director of development and construction for UNDC.
Vice President, UNDC.
Vice President. Robert Drillings, counsel to UNDC and a partner of the law firm Berger Gray. Public finance lawyer for over 40 years.
Maria Delshaj, UNDP.
We have an academic consultant. These are our tenants. UNDP occupies most of DC1. They've been there over 40 years as a subtenant of the United Nations. Now we're dealing directly with them, and please God, all the documents will be signed by October 15th.
I'm Neil Hood, special counsel, the law firm. We're outside counsel.
Hey, on the screen, guys want to give us a little hello?
Hi, everyone. Ken Coopersmith, Vice President of Operations, UNDC.
Pat Valentino, Berger Gray, Issuers Council.
I'm Warren Rupel. I'm the engagement shareholder from CBIZ and Meyer Hoffman McCann, your auditors and tax preparers.
Marty Hammond, investment advisor, PFM Asset Management, and I'm joined by my colleague on our trading desk today, Chris Harris, also from PFM.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Ross.
And Ross Silver from Fried Frank, who sat in on many of these meetings already.
And Marvin Marcus from the Siebert underwriting firm.
Marvin Marcus has been involved, I won't say 30 at least, or maybe 40 years on financing for the municipal financing.
Actually, George, I'm not that old. It's not 40 years. You know.
So it's funny. I'm willing to admit my age.
I do go back to Tom Appleby though, so it's a while.
Tom was our first president. Back at least a long time ago. He was a good man. So let's open the meeting and welcome you all. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from March 30th. We just joined by the Honorable Ralph Carion, Commissioner of Housing for the City of New York, and who's going to build over $100,000 of affordable units. 100,000 units.
yeah.
Or do.
Taking your time.
100,000 units.
Yeah.
It's a lot. So first item on the agenda is approve the minutes. Anybody has any comments? We get an motion to approve.
I'll move.
Seconded. Moved. Minutes approved. Governance and Compensation Committee report, including our mission statement. Rob, you wanna?
The Governance and Compensation Committee met on August 28th. It's in tab 2 of your packet. The purpose of the meeting is to review the corporation's mission statement for 2024 and the comp and benefit program. Make you aware that there's a New York State public authorities law requires a mission statement for all public authorities in New York State. It requires the board to review it on an annual basis. And it can be found on the corporation's website, which if you haven't seen it, has been recently updated. So it's a completely new design on the website. As I said, this committee and then the board reviews it annually. And we do not recommend any changes for this year. We think it's sort of fairly broad and in fact covers what we're planning for the future of the buildings, new leases, enhancing the long-term value of the buildings, etc. So unless there are any questions or comments, we would seek approval of the mission statement.
Any questions? We get a motion, please. Seconded. Second. So done. Approved. Third item, next item on the agenda, the audit committee report, I guess, I-90. You want to give a report on that? On the 990? Right.
Yep. I can't tell if Rob wants to do it, or if he wants me to do it, so
I'll just cue it up. So, the audit committee met on August 29th. Our longtime auditors from Marks Paneth were at that meeting, and Warren Roble is the partner at the firm. UNDC is somewhat unusual. It's a public authority, and it's also a 501c3 organization. So we can take donations and get a tax write-off, but as such, we have to file an annual Form 990 with the IRS. Typically, it's prepared by Marks Paneth in our management. It was reviewed at the audit committee meeting. And Warren, if you wanted to say a few words about the 990 for this year, last year it should be.
Sure. And again, we went through this form in a little greater detail with the audit committee. Answered some questions. Essentially, just to give the board some comfort, there's all the financial information in here essentially comes from the audited financial statements for 2022. There are some differences between accounting and tax rules for certain amounts that are recorded. So there's some reconciling items there which are appropriate. And then there are a series of governance questions that are on the form, and all the governance questions there are answered in a way that would be favorable to a review by the IRS or anyone else. So, both from a governance point of view and from a financial numbers point of view, it's a very straightforward return. There's really nothing unusual that I feel I should call to your attention.
I think we can comment on it. Are we going to discuss the financial statements? Finance committee. Are there any comments that were done by the auditors vis-a-vis any statements, the 990, any of the balance sheets or anything else based on the corporation?
No, but like I said, they came from our 2022 audit of the 2022 financial statements, and there's additional information that's supplied by the corporation to allow the tax people to complete it, and there's really no questions or issues that were discussed.
Okay. Any questions on this?
I have is, would anyone else like to join the audit committee? We have a very,
Anyone who would like to join, please volunteer. I've asked
I know,
a number of meetings.
thought I'd try it.
Someone else joins, I'll resign.
Oh, wait, that's okay.
That was so positive.
All right, so I agree with the comment. We meet, what, how many times a year?
Sometimes a year.
Several times a year, and we can always use some good advice. Can we get on the proposal of accepting the audit committee report? So move seconded.
Second.
Before we go on to the next one, I want to introduce Ed Mermelstein has joined us. I thought you were going to be on.
Apologies, I thought in person would be.
I think it's always good to have you. It's the commissioner for New York City International Affairs. He will explain one day what that means. But we're very glad he's on the board. I think it's a very important relationship to the mayor's office, deputy mayor, as well as U.S. mission and foreign governments. The fact that they're here 193 nations in New York. I hope you visited all 193 ambassadors until now, but you're welcome to joining us on the board.
Thanks for charging.
Next item is the Finance Committee report.
Sure. So the Finance Committee met August 29th. We gave you, there's an agenda to that committee meeting. There is an executive summary to the investment advisors report. The investment advisor is PFM Asset Management. So we have Marty Hammond and Chris Harris from PFM on the line. Also in the materials tab 4 is portfolio summary, the various funds that PFM manages. We've also been talking to them about possibly managing funds from a planned bond financing in the future. And then finally, we have a report on the corporation's investments. The last tab, as you can see, it's kind of exclusive treasury notes, say this US government varying maturity dates. And it's basically laddered to match the use of funds. I'll go to Marty and Chris to kind of say a few words here.
Sure. Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Perfect. Yeah. So Rob, I think you hit the high points. 100% of UNDC's assets are managed in accordance with UNDC's in compliance with UNDC's investment policy. At the end of June, total assets were valued at $73 million. That included almost $29 million in the renewal and replacement funds that are laddered between 0 and 3 years with an average maturity of approximately 1.5 years, all invested in U.S. Treasuries, government guaranteed. It also included $37.5 million in surplus funds allocated between 0 and 2 years.
They want to make for the movie.
Of 1 year. Again, U.S. government guaranteed securities, all treasuries. And then last but not least, very important funds here, almost $7 million in debt service funds, which are allocated very specifically to U.S. treasuries, meant to provide liquidity for UNDC's principal and interest payments on those bonds.
You've heard a summary. We have, as of this report, approximately $130 million in treasuries in the corporation. It was a decision by this board many, many years ago not to take risks in the stock market, even though we may have lost some opportunity or gained some opportunity. That being a public benefit corporation, the purpose of helping to develop real estate for the United Nations, to try to keep it as safe as sure. So we are sitting with this $130 million, which now a chunk of it is going to be used to redevelop DC1 and DC2, plus the public financing that we're going to be doing. Okay. This is the state where we are. I know we've talked about on many occasions to look for other areas to invest the money. And I would appreciate whoever has some thoughts, is step up. We have an entity that helps us manage it. And maybe the time has come after we spend a big chunk of this money. So how much money are we left with?
Currently, the plan is to have about $36 million of and after doing the financing. That basically what we did last time with the rating agencies was to keep a certain amount of liquidity off the debt service reserve fund on the bonds. And I think the intent will be the same this time after the financing. So the bulk of the funds that are being held by the corporation will be used as intended, saved up over the years to be invested in the building as part of the sources of funds to do the renovations.
We will get in the executive committee discussion on sources and uses of funds, as well as the plan, the redevelopment of DC1 and DC2, which both buildings were built over 40 years ago. And the UNICEF, which is the third building across the street, will be owned by UNICEF in 2026. And in addition, all bonds of the corporation will be paid off by 2027. There's enough income coming in to cover the bonds. And we have two buildings, which are really two assets, no mortgages on them. And we hope, please God, I use that word, please God, that our tenants will finish and finalize with us. We'll discuss that later. And we will have a new campus for the United Nations. New buildings, up to date. That's what we discuss, mainly what is up to date. And we believe there will be. And that takes the place of the 1 million square foot building that we were planning to build on the park, which was never approved by the United Nations. So,
Going back to the finance committee report, once the capital expenditures are made consistent with the goals that George just laid out, it would be beneficial to the UNDC if with that remaining $36 million, give or take, if our advisors could share with the committee on a regular basis opportunities they feel that we could take other than T-bills in the years following, such that we can, the corporation can benefit from increased yield consistent with the investment policies.
we have asked them at the last meeting, a few other meetings, that when that time horizon until then, to give us some various ideas. We've been very fortunate. Many years of less than 1% income, literally because treasuries were 1%. But today we're earning 4 or 5% vis-a-vis on treasuries, and it's not a bad deal where we stand. The 36, I hope that we have $36 million because we have to build out a lot.
Good.
And we're having cushions. We hope there are no cost overruns. There's no difficulty in getting various equipment, and vis-a-vis the building has to be refurbished. So the goal is to leave approximately $36 billion within the treasury of the corporation. So if there are any other questions on this.
Yeah, I would say we did amend the investment guidelines about 2 years ago to kind of allow more active management by PFM of those funds. So under New York State, you can invest in commercial paper at the very highest levels by the rating agencies. You can invest in government, other outside of treasuries like Fannie Mae's, Freddie Mac's. So PFM is looking at that pretty much continuously. I think they didn't see much value, right, Marty, in kind of governments outside of treasuries, especially now. But it is.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Jessica, and thanks for the comments, Mr. Klein and Rob. Agree with that. I think now, when you go back over the last few years, and Chris can jump in here too, Chris Harris on my team here. If we're looking at federal agencies which are permitted, they've been trading through treasuries for the most part on the short end of the yield curve, which is where we would look to invest a majority of these funds that we've been managing. Through treasuries to us means technical sort of jargon for they're trading at less yield than treasuries. just because of some market dynamics going on in the federal agency market. So we haven't found a lot of value in other governmental securities. Currently, though, we think at least with perhaps some of the bond proceeds funds that will be spent over a 6 to 9 month period, we know that the draws would likely go out several years, right, for some of these projects, but there will be an opportunity, we believe, to invest some of those shorter term funds that will be needed over a 6 to 9 month period in commercial paper. And we'll have those kinds of conversations with finance. I think the value now, Chris, is we're seeing somewhere between 40 and 50 basis points of yield advantage over treasuries in that space. Do I have that right?
Yeah, that's right, Marty. Depending upon the name, the most value that we're seeing is in the 6 to 9 month area of the curve. So for some of the draws that occur in that 6 to 9 month area, we'd be looking at commercial paper. We'd also probably consider funding some of the draws in months 10, 11, 12, 13 in commercial paper as well, just because the incremental income that we would get from CP relative to treasuries or federal agencies would still compensate UNDC for keeping those proceeds a little shorter. As far as names are concerned, because the policy is limited to A1 plus P1, we're looking at some of the large, everyday names that we would be purchasing. So no small regional banks, no, corporations that otherwise would subject UNDC monies to too much risk, for example.
Funds now.
Thank you.
Okay, can we get a proposal of approval of this committee report? Any second? Next item on the agenda. Management report.
Oh. Yeah. So this, there's a management report that's found in tab 5 of your book. Rearrange this. So attachment A of tab 5 shows 6 month report. These are actuals January 1st through June 30th, 2023. And it's a little unusual. You can see we had a decline in net revenues, a fairly substantial one. And the main reason for that is the UN leases expired in March of 2023. The UN basically vacated all their space in the DC1 building, except for space occupied by UNDP, their subtenant, and some smaller UN tenants that are located in the 11th floor. So for that 3 month period, April 1 through June, we were basically collecting no rent on that space, which resulted in a drop in revenues of roughly 50%. And that's going to continue for some time until we re-tenant that space. A lot of the space, 6 floors of it, which will be occupied by UNDP as swing space while they build out their own starting likely next year.
Did we mark the space which will become available? The non-swing space is being actively marketed now.
Most of it is swing space, to be honest. It's pretty much the whole building. We've had some marketing of that space on a limited basis. I mean, the target would be UN organizations. Had a lot of interest, I would say. The challenge is when you're coordinating a major tenant build out, promise the space at a date certain to another tenant.
I thought you had some floor that you're never going to do swing space.
There's 1 floor that's, but it's pretty much all occupied by, or will be by UN.
You also can't guarantee and when the space will be available.
That's the issue. Right?
We estimate it'll be available in 2006.
Most of the swing space floors. I didn't know it was all swing space. That's
Mostly swing space floor. In DC2, there are some existing tenants who've asked to be renewed, all of them, which is direct subtenant of the United Nations. United Nations is basic tenant of DC2. It's 440,000 square feet. DC1, the main tenant is UNDP, which is a subtenant. of the United Nations. Their leases expired March 2023. That's United Nations, that they were extended July, and they've been extended now to the end of 2023. And as an update, publicly and privately, we've completed the letters of intent for new space for the United Nations in DC2 and direct leases with UNDP in DC1. Approximately 158,000 square feet. 258. 258 square feet out of 440 something thousand square feet. So we're now executive session finalizing the leases. We get a report on that. We get a report on the financing, where we stand. And just in general, we're dealing with the city, the Deputy Mayor's office, and the city's been extremely confident, both in the Deputy Mayor's office, Chairman of the City Planning Commission, your office, and in the sense of all that we need from the city, backup material, leasing material, financing material, legal help, and city planning. So it's extraordinary. I've never seen such kind of cooperation out of any administration with what's going on now. These are helping to make sure that the United Nations helps. So,
right. So that's historical numbers for the 6 months. We also have some increased administrative expenses, basically transaction related fees for professionals to put this plan into action. And if you look at tab B, that's a budget for 2024 and then projections going forward 2025. This is a state requirement. You submit a budget in New York State every year. It gets posted on the website as well. Sort of interesting, there are various assumptions in this budget. So for example, we assume we have new leases start effective next year. On the revenue side, we're capitalizing the free rent period. So typical commercial leases, tenants, especially large tenants, get an extended free rent period. Go to anywhere 12 to 20 months, somewhere like that. So that free rent is kind of capitalized. It's soon to be funded out of bond financing proceeds. And that's where you see the $49 million.
I want to emphasize the attachment on the bottom of the asterisk. You'll see it says it's based upon new leases expected to be signed with DC1, UN, and UNDP. Our hope and our goal is to finalize that at the middle of October, latest the third week of October. If we do not finalize it, then we will run into January and February of next year. There is an extension of the leases that are outstanding with the United Nations. And hopefully whatever financing we have to finalize will be done in January, February. But in order to get the financing, Chuck will talk about it in the executive session, we have to finish the leases. Council is here, future tenant UNDP is here. And our goal is to finalize it. I think if we sat down 4 or 5 sessions just in a room and throw the keys away, we would get this done. I'm optimistic. You know?
It would be a good approach.
Yeah. Good. So, maybe you want to continue.
Yeah, so you can see in the budget 2024, $49 million in revenues, and that is as if there was no free rent. We have a big uptick in interest income, and that is basically the proceeds from the investments being invested. It's much higher than normal because there's $300 million plus.
Thank God.
Yeah. For investment, you have a spending item, building operations, 19.3 million. That's run the buildings essentially. There's additional detail here as well. Ground rent and real estate taxes. Ground rent is at 2 UN Plaza, pay ground rent to a private party. And also real estate taxes, some of which is reimbursed by the hotel. Administrative expenses. That number, the 3.7 million, does not include all the transaction costs, which are also kind of capitalized as part of the finance. And then you've got an interest expense item, assuming a bond financing later this year or early next year, 19 million. I think it's on covered it. That's good. There's additional detail in the appendices. Schedule of debt, page 4 of 6, which has the 2019 bonds, which were fees as part of the new offering. Other bonds.
What's the current outstanding on the old package? 20 what?
25 million. 20 million.
20 million.
Yeah.
20 million is outstanding?
They all get paid off by 2027.
Well, I think we would defease them upon the new issue.
We'll defeat them, but if there is no new issue,
Right, I got you.
we have enough income coming from UNICEF
Gotcha.
and finalizing whatever is, all the bonds of this corporation will be paid off by 2020. Whether we have a new funding or we don't have enough.
Right. So that I think is the budget. There's also a statement of projected capital costs on page 5 of 6. It's sort of divided between it's typical 1 and 2 year UN Plaza capital projects, and then kind of this bigger building repositioning project that we're discussing. We're working with Turner. We obviously we have schedules, but everything has to kind of align. Things may be adjusted. That's moving forward. Questions on things?
I'll say from the management point of view, we have questions every day. And simply because these are moving targets, especially when you're dealing with older buildings. And we're very glad that Rob Schubert joined us. And we've been getting really up-to-date numbers of Turner Construction. We're just going to do, we will vote on that later after executive session. Is going to be coordinating all the construction for these buildings, and Cosentini, who's doing all the MVP work. So I think, which we'll discuss in the executive session, we have the numbers fairly well in hand. We feel comfortable, know where we're going, and as we finalize leases and exhibits attached to the leases, I hope the after Shoshana, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, and sometime in the end of October, we will discuss an executive session. We're lined up. We're lined up from the financing side. We're lined up legal elements where we are, and from the construction side.
Yep. So we just need a motion for approval of the budgets.
Second. I also want to pass on to the board that if things don't work out the way we hope it works out, which is important for the city of New York, there will be 2 buildings empty, no mortgages on them, which unencumbered, with a hotel of 400-something rooms on top, which is a separate entity under a condominium. Whatever value that may be, we keep getting different here and so on. And these are empty buildings. It'll be owned by the city of New York. And the city of New York will, that time, will do what it wants to do in relation to it. That's not the goal here. Goal is to help the United Nations and its entities, which includes UNDP, UNICEF, and the United Nations. New York is the capital of the world. Having the United Nations here is part of being capital of the world. And we are under instructions of the mayor and the governor, and all deputy mayors and assistants of the governor, to try to get this done. Because the UN is a very important development in New York. Best count we had was approximately 17,000 employees with the city of New York. We have excellent relationships with the United Nations and the Secretary General and his staff, and with UNDP and their staff and associates, and with the U.S. mission. Recently, it has been totally brought up to date constantly. The ambassador of operations, a very intelligent, capable man, and the U.S. Embassy is very important as relates to the funds that have to be flowing for the United Nations and the importance of them in New York. But just again, speak for the board, sense of security and knowledge that we are well covered of the responsibilities that we have. Next item on the agenda, anything else? There's a report, I think that's what we did. So we're gonna go into executive session. Which is the policy of the corporation as we discuss leases and finance and operations for security reasons, confidentiality reasons. We want to stay in executive sessions. So we'll try to do the executive as fast as possible.